Oh, hello. Let me just do some random stuff. Brilliant. So, before we go into um, I brought up the topic of like the BMC near miss reports. I just thought it'd be interesting to go through them and see what we can learn from that. Be not just as instructors or coaches, but also if you're a rock climber as well. But this thing popped up on my uh, news feed. It's from Mountain Training, and it's a women in mountain training sort of webinar series. Um, it's interesting in that I know some people, fragile men will know, but I think it's really important. So I think also there's some stuff that us men could actually benefit from sort of understanding these issues. Like when I was working for the British Antarctic Survey, I had to train up people who come on base. Now, in Antarctica, we have, often outside, for instance, we have a P flag. We don't have a toilet. We do have a toilet block, but often that's an issue. So there were a lot of things which we had to cover for both men and women that were really only, the emphasis was on helping women cope, but actually the men needed to know about them so that they were aware of the issues that the additional issues that some women face. Like if we're out in the field, and they can go use the rec area, and it's like half an hour from base. There's no easy way back. There's a P flag. There's no actual toilet block. What happens if a female needed to use some feminine products? And I had to talk through this, and I can remember one day I basically had one woman who was in on a flight, and the rest were a bunch of builders building a building down there, and I had to talk about these things in front of them, and I didn't really know much, and we were really lucky in that we had some really strong women field guides and field assistants. It's interesting thing. I'll be interesting to see what comes of this, and it's a growing thing that we need to be aware of. So anyway, moving on from that, where are we? Have I got that? No, no. If I go to this one, that one, if I deal. So I'm just going to start at the top, and I'm going to go through. So this one is, I'll have to put my gigs on. There was a rock fall at Winter's Leap. The person wasn't off route. They pulled a sizable boulder off. It injured their belayer, and fortunately, because the climber shouted down that people that were below them weren't injured as well. There are some issues with there isn't really a mountain rescue team that deals with the Wye Valley. And so the lessons were, the pair weren't off route, but there is loose rock, and there's some more loose rock ones coming up. But there was a lot of dry periods with some heavy rain, which can actually really alter the structure of the rock, washing out stuff. The guidance in the guidebook is you should ask for Gloucester Police, so they actually asked for the police, and they got put to a Welsh service, so they had services coming from England and Wales. They use what three words, which is, again, I think there are some rescue services that like it, some that don't. That's the first one. If we go to the next one, what's the next one? So this is a climber off route on a route on Lundy, I think. the climber fell round an arete and they severed one rope and nearly severed the other. And fortunately, somebody else was at the crag and they rescued them. Some of these are, this is sounds like it was done reported by the rescuer, not the person. So often, if I don't really want. Oh, can you see it? Oh yeah, you can't see that down there, so that's good. Um, so again, it's just a question of if you often people if they can't, I've seen it quite a lot in my climbing when people can't do a move or they can't see the actual way through the actual route. They often do what I go. They either go left or right at the traffic lights rather than straight ahead, and quite often that results in them getting into more technical, more demanding terrain, potentially with less gear. Um, so this is somebody was leading up a route. They clipped the third bolt. It was difficult to reach, so they had a panic draw. A panic draw is often it's got a little bit of it's like a mini clip stick in a quick draw. So you can make them yourself with a bit of plastic, and he's clipped that in, and then it's a lot longer than other drawers. So he's decided to put in a normal draw, and he's put it in above the panic draw. And then as he's trying to fight to get the panic draw out, he has ended up removing ball, quite a big fall, because obviously the rope would have gone up to the thing and back down to him. Just you need to be careful. I would try to grab the panic draw as I was clipping it in, and often try and put stuff in below it, so that when I weight that, then the panic draw is unweighted. But again, these things, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Just be careful if you are going to switch out your panic draw. I mean, the other thing they could have done is climb up to the next bolt, clip that and lower it down and sorted it out basically on top rope. There are a million and one ways to skin a cat, and you just need to be aware of the risks. It was fairy cave got abseiling down them. So people were abbing down a route. They joined a rope with back-to-back overhand knots. I'm assuming it's hard to make out. I've got a little bit of rope here. When they say back-to-back overhands, I'm assuming what they did is an overhand knot and then another overhand knot. And I'll just try and make this a little bit neater. So often these knots, what you want them to be is nice and tidy. Now, the idea with these is that, if I bring this down a little bit, spring my knee up, is they should pop up like this. So they're very flat, whereas the old-fashioned way of tying knots together, which was not old-fashioned, the previous way was to do a double fisherman. So you tie a knot here. This is really bad because I'm using the same color rope, so it's hard to make out. And so what you end up here is when this is going over something, it's more likely to catch because this rope, like the knot, pop upwards. And what they found was that as they pulled on the rope, it was harder than normal to actually pull on the rope. And they pulled down like a brick-sized block. Now, because they were wearing helmets, they were obviously in a lot less risk. But it's just one of those things. Sometimes when you're abseiling, you really have to check what the ropes are running over. Sometimes when I'm abseiling, if I know my ropes are long enough, I will basically just lock off one of the ropes on my retrievable abseil and abseil over the edge and get the actual knot over the edge so that there isn't any of that risk of it doing. But that's kind of an advanced skill. And if the belay's a long way back, so if the belay was, 5 meters back, I'm potentially bringing up one rope 5 meters, making it more likely that I come off the end of the rope. So there are other risks involved, and so putting knots in the end of the rope is one of the key things. So here, climber reached the end of the climb, preparing to clip. They ripped a hold off and obviously fell down. A significant amount of rocks fell down to adjacent groups. The rock did land on the adjacent person's rope and damage it. So it's one of those things of, if you are on rock that is loose, you want to try and manage it, but it's sometimes really hard to anticipate it. And there's another one coming up. I'll flick straight onto it. I think it might be the next one. Oh no. I'll go back. There's another one coming up where somebody, they anticipated the rock being loose, and they said that they deliberately belayed to the side, and this is, on loose rock, and one of the things I have climbed quite a lot of over the years, because I'm an idiot and I used to enjoy adventure climbing down on the Clean Peninsula, is, you have to do these things. And I've certainly not climbing, but I can remember cleaning a slate route when I was re-equipping it, and I've put so many nicks in abseil ropes, dropping stuff off cleaning routes. So yeah, just, a hole breaking, it hasn't hurt anybody, but it's damaged the rope. So it's, how could you get out of that? If you were on adjacent routes, maybe you could clip your rope from the adjacent thing into the rope going down to the belay, pull it up, and then the person could actually be lowered on both ropes, like the one that's damaged and the one that isn't. There are lots of different ways that you could do this. Somebody could have gone around the top, made an abseil. They could have or belayed free. Yeah, it's just more about being aware that, where you put your equipment, just to be aware that things can fall onto it. So trad rock climbing, ascending, the leader climbing the route, set up an anchor. One rope was parked through the anchor screw gate and brought back to the belay position where it was clovage. Ah, yes. So from what I understand, if you imagine somebody has tied into the rope with a figure of 8, then to keep this tail out the end, they have put a stopper knot. So they've got their figure of 8 and this, and what's happened is something like that's happened. So now what they've done is they've clipped the clove hitch that should have been going through this loop to make a belay into this. So effectively they've been held on by the stopper knot. Now the person didn't fall. There was nothing nothing bad happened. If the person had fallen, maybe it could have failed. There has been many instances. Some people now teach people to put the stopper knot like this. Obviously, I've got such a long tail, it's a very poor knot. The reason being is you can't do that. I've always taught to, when you do a stopper knot, to tie it, and as I dress it, I try and make sure that it's right up against that knot. So there is very, but even then I can pull it out and do that. So it's very hard to get it totally right. Um, there was there have been issues in the past where people, at climbing walls, they've put a little bit of tape around this, and this has come through, and then people have clipped into that, and effectively they've been tied into a loop that has been held by a bit of sticky tape. There was a fatality um, on a zip wire in North Wales that happened, and one of the reasons I'm no longer on the rescue team is I pointed out some of the failures in the systems there. So we've got sport rock climbing, one of the two anchor manuals, very rusty, hence very suspect. Clean the anchor and descend off a single male, conscious of potential single point failure. Descent safely accomplished. So yeah, this is really interesting in that every single time you go sport climbing, you are climbing on abandoned equipment. No, it's not like a climbing wall. In a climbing wall, everything that is PPE related will have to be assessed and inspected. Imagine at most climbing walls, it would be at least every 6 months minimum. If it's like a school wall that doesn't get much use, it might be annually. But a lot of places, a lot of big walls, it will be, almost monthly. But outside, these things won't be done, and you might have like a rusty ring or a malleon. So there are different things. One is to always, if you do a lot of sport climbing, is to have your own malleon and ring, and you could replace it. A malleon and a ring will cost you like £6, and just look at it as you doing your part for the climbing community. Every do things. You can lower off a single mayon. I sometimes, because if you have two a little bit apart like that, and it kind of puts a weird tension on the rope, it coils the rope one way and then the other way, and you get really twisty ropes. So I have in the past decided to only lower off a single malleon, very conscious of the fact that it's a single point failure, but I have inspected the bolt, I've inspected the ring, and I'm happy with that. Yeah, it's I think people need to get into the habit of thinking bolts are abandoned pieces of equipment, and that you need to check them as you using them. So as you climb up, clip something, give it a little wobble, make sure it's all okay. And yeah, like this person said, carry a sacrificial mayon, because even if often like if the mayon's really rusty, maybe the ring isn't, so you could just replace the mayon. Southwest, I went recently to do some DWS. Good evening, calm seas, warm. I did some routes and tried a steep roof. Was upside down for a good 45 seconds or so, trying pretty hard on a couple of moves. Then cut loose and swung around and felt a bit awkward. And fell a bit awkwardly front first into the water. Came up, made a joke for friends about him filming it, so obviously thought it was okay. He then started to pack a couple of bits away in cabin film without realising. Took a couple of strokes and blacked out. At some point shortly after, probably I inhaled seawater and came to completely disoriented. I have no idea where I was or why I was in the water. It was scary. I managed to swim out. I think I blacked out because I was pulling pretty hard. I was basically upside down and spun into sea. Or probably wasn't breathing enough whilst trying the moves. Essentially, shallow water, blackout. Put it on film. Yeah, it's a very rare event, but you definitely want to, if you're going deep water sailing, you just probably don't want to do it alone. I can remember years ago, one of the first times I went to do Tonga at Connor Cove. I went there on my own, and I went there with a friend who I knew could abseil, and I left him with a rope and showed him a belay at the top of the crack, and just went, "Well, if I fall off and I'm not conscious, just if you could abseil in and rescue me." Um, but you know, I think this would have been. I'm trying to think. 90. I went to Jazz Uni 98, 95. Probably would have been like early 90s. So probably we were probably pre mobile. So he would have had to come and get me out and then work out how to get himself up. So yeah, um, it's a bit like that. The Aaron Ralston, the 128 hours or whatever it is, 127 hours where he cuts his own arm off. You know, you need to tell people where you are. So, suspect wall, travel quarry, Cluith, serious weather, clear drive, familiarity, though local, skill level, debatable, objective, climb, laugh, make memories, survive. Route, incident occurred, off route, see below, see below. Having been informed by the crux of an otherwise charming route, we were forced to abandon a brand new quick draw and retreat. An abseil was used to rapid quick shot, after which one person had scrambled up the easy slope to the right of the wall to recover the ab rope. The incident occurred on descent, the same route as ascent. Following the recovery of the now coiled ab rope, the rope was thrown down to allow hands to be used for balance. The person checked the stability of a large rock at the top of the slope and satisfied himself that it was stable and connected to the planet. As the past rock came loose and fell away, causing the person to fall, a strong attempt was made by the person to sing the 1970s hit immigrant song, while I feel free falling roughly a third of the height of the crag. This was a bit weak, so the person tried again while tumbling the rest of the way down the slope, achieving multiple small bounces but getting nowhere near the original vocals. We're finally stopping next to the now stationary rock at the bottom of the slope. First aid happened. The person had maintained consciousness throughout the event and was able to walk the streams made to self-fracture and drove to A&E. Multiple bumps went into the head. Let's see, did it say they were... Yeah, so it sounds like because they've walked up to the top of the crack, they've taken their helmet off, and they've, you know, used their head as a brake on the way down. This is, I think, you know, so you don't have to be bland when you're writing these things. This is actually, you know, did we merit? Yes, we did. They had a good time. They had a laugh. Wet wipes go. After much suggestion, well, I agreed that we could each have conducted ourselves in the same way. There was no single action that contributed to the event. A person would have also taken Tiffus route that same evening. Yeah, so two of them have gone up and down that thing. It's I guess there's a bit of familiarity of that, but the guy still coming down had checked the rock. It's hard to, yeah, it's hard to predict when things will suddenly disappear without your knowing. Yeah, so this is another one where the person is like, they knew it was a new route. They knew there were some loose rock in other bits of this quarry. They took precautions not to stand directly beneath the climber, and the climber proceeded cautiously, and nothing happened because they were aware that, you know, some of the routes were described as loose. Oh my god, there's like an Apache helicopter flying past my house. Taking a group of competent indoor climbers out for their first taste of outdoor rock on an easy single pitch route at Stanage. An anchor had been set up to top rope youth VDIF, weather stable, intermittent bursts of sun, 24-hour ring, and ease without wind chill. The anchor comprised of a sling around a small thread to the left of the route finish, and two small nuts grouped to the right, one of which threaded into the crack. It was built as a sliding anchor between the thread and the group of knots, with the limiting knots very close to the marketing knot. So, okay, I think I know what they're talking about. The route then saw multiple top row percent by Mopus. It's worth noting that the second line had also been set up on a neighbouring ivy crack, where I had used the same thread again for using another thing. The final, so it's kind of one simulated leading on a top rope belay from climber 2 and lead belay to learn how to place gear on the first track. Comment noted this route a good first trad route with lots of gear. Indeed, climb 1 did a great clean ascent. We're getting to the top. Climb 3 to climb 1 off belay. So the lead belayer to be lowered off around a third of the way down, 2 to 3 meters. Climber 1 and climber 2 stopped, noting they felt a sudden drop. I told them to stay there, went up to the side suspect, and found that the thread had failed with the sliding anchor and limited knots transferring load. Yeah, so I'll see if I can get a thing. So there's got to be a sling in here somewhere. So sometimes, I think this is what it's talking about. Sometimes we equalize, there's this old school thing of equalizing stuff with like this. What happens is if one fails, you'll have this massive extension. So what people could do is you do either 1 or 2. It's really common, I think, in America, so that if one fails, then you don't go all the way to the end, and it limits the fall factor, and it means that your belay should be sort of under equal tension. Now, the reason I say that's quite common in America is a lot of their belays are bolted, and so actually, if you do that, the bolts are very unlikely to fail because they aren't trad gear. But one of the ideas is like things are independent from each other. In America, they say serene, and the NE is no extension, so you don't get that shock load. This person said they don't build sliding anchors very often. They find it slower than like a BFK big knot. So the other way you would do it is, if you had these two, could tie a knot, I have that, and if one fails, there is no extension, there is no shock load on the other things. I'm not sure. I tend to not teach these sliding anchors, if that's how I'm interpreting right. I point out that way that they often do it with a doubled over 240 sling, and it's called a quad in America when you do these sliding anchors. I think other things that would have happened there is where the person climbed to the top because they were leading, they might have pulled up the stuff and something might have happened there. Him saying he used that thread twice on 2 different routes. That's again a quite common thing, I think, when we're setting up multiple routes, is to have one, the bit, if you've got like 3 points and this is the one where you're going to have another one starting sort of here, then this one and this one will be the same point, but you still have like at least several other bits that are totally independent. So it's often comes down to judgment. Because it was a thread, threads are omnidirectional, or they should be, unless it was a spike. His judgment on using smaller threads, so yeah, if it's held on by a pen width, then maybe not. You've got to think of the integrity of the rock. Yeah. So an MCI was in charge of a group of 16 to 18-year-olds who were, where was this one? Climbing wall in Scotland. Been signed off as independent climbers at the local climbing wall. In the second half of a regular session at this wall, the climbers split into pairs to practice lead climbing, which involves clipping. As there was a weight difference between these two, climber and belay, a secondary rise cord on OM had to be fitted to the first bolt to add friction to the system. The belay device used was Grugri 2. Both devices were confirmed as correctly fitted. At the time of the accident, the lighter climber who was leading, but the OM had been intentionally left in place on the first bolt. As X attempted to clip the final anchor point, he was starting to run out of strength. This was being filmed at the time by the MCI for coaching purposes. The MCI was not concerned at the prospect of a fall, as there were plenty of rope to absorb the fall, and there should have been no problems from reaching the ground at this point. Fell as anticipated, but the fall was not stopped. He struck the ground. Help was immediately given, and X was told to lie still. And was called. In order to facilitate this, the MCI removed the rope from his harness. The knot was significantly difficult to untie, evidence that the rope had been loaded and absorbed a lot of energy in the fall. Could find no obvious signs of injury, but he was sent to A&E standard practice, and the doctor examined it. Could find no signs of injuries. Sent to X-ray, confirmed there was no damage to any bones. X-ray was checked with on-call radiologist. No treatment. It's the opinion of the MCI at present the OM may have reduced the speed of the fall to below the threshold needed to. Okay, yeah. So OMs are devices you put on the first bolt. So if you've got a fat knacker and a tiny little person, so often I've got some friends, like who are 6'2" plus, built like tanks, and their girlfriends are 5'2" waifs. And so if they fall off at the wall, what can effectively happen is their poor girlfriend or belayer, if they're smaller, and even me, if I'm only like 5'8", and I'm not super hench, so I can get like whipped off the floor. And so basically the OM is designed to take some of the force to stop that person getting ripped up. And because it was the other way around, so it was a really heavy person, the light person. So the light person's fallen, and the OM is kind of added a bit of a friction, and then the Grigri hasn't locked up because it's a bit like your seatbelt in a car, in that it needs a certain force for the Grigri's cam to lock. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think it's very important for instructors and climbers to be aware of this. So if you are using an OM and you swap round, so the heavy person's belaying, you need to take the OM off. I've definitely belayed small kids, like really small kids, and as I'm climbing, I've held the rope here, so this is the live rope. I've still got the rope locked off, and and I know I've got to kind of walk in because I'm a heavy lump and I need to give them a soft catch. So I have a tiny little bit of slack here with the expectation that this hand will be pulled up a little bit, and as that hand gets pulled up, I would try and go. It's got a weird kind of name, but they've fallen off, and this rope hasn't even moved out of my hand, and I've basically held the lead fall of a small kid with one hand. So yeah, just really interesting. That's a really interesting one for instructors. Absolutely. Never heard of that before. Very, very interesting. That was April this year. Climber falls off a micro-sized block at the top of a gully, which broke into pieces when hitting the ground. The rock hit the belay leg. When lowering off the areas, the rock had also severed the rope on the floor almost. Bowman didn't want to pass the rope through the Grigri and take the weight. Climber was rescued and dropped another rope. Yeah, so again, nothing you could really do with that. You just need to be able to, uh, in this case, uh, another rope was dropped. Harper Hill Quarry, it's one of these, it's got a lot of easy sport climbs, I think. I've never been there. But again, I think there's been a lot of issue recently around with a lot of there's a lot of easy routes being developed on subpar crags that are inherently loose. There was some crags developed in North Wales, and I've already seen on like the North Wales limestone website that you know blocks with the actual bolts, like either the second or third bolt of this route were on the floor when somebody went there. So again, you've got to not just think that all of the bolts are abandoned, but actually, has the rock changed since it was bolted? And who bolted it? Now, I'm not saying the people in North Wales don't know how to bolt. But, when I've been re-equipping routes in the quarries, there were some times where, I couldn't physically get a bolt in where I wanted to. I had to put them either higher or lower because every time I tapped the rock, I was like, okay, it sounds solid. And then I'd get the drill there. And every time you go in with the hammer drill, it's like, oh no, that is definitely hollow now. I'm hitting it with a hammer drill. And yeah, it's a massive responsibility, drilling. And I don't wish that responsibility on anyone. Everyone does their best, and what would have been solid for the person putting that bolt in could well not be solid in a year's time. If you look at the one that we just talked about in the Wye Valley, where a block came off and it hit the B layer. The person in that scenario had actually seconded the route prior, and that route, and other people had climbed it and had not, that rock suddenly become loose. Cool. So, conniving erect, came across the pair with his split shoulder due to an ongoing injury. So it sounds like their shoulder's dislocated. I can remember a very famous winter climb around here, both of his shoulders dislocating while he was soloing a route, and the person he was fortunately was out with somebody, and they had to go around and basically rescue him. And so they've just come round and rescued them. Yeah, so I think so this is like it's a grade 3 scramble, and they were soloing it, which is fair enough. A lot of people solo routes, but they're just suggesting that if you're doing like these things, you want to have a rope and harness on you, because otherwise you basically, it would be hard to extricate you. Somebody's got to get you and put a harness on, whereas if you've got a harness and a rope, you might be able to abseil off yourself. So yeah, like, really good point. It's I mean, I might go out soloing scrambles of sort of grade 3 myself. I much prefer to do them with friends and clients with a rope, because essentially you're soloing easy routes with big boots and a rucksack. Winter's Leap, Shovelman, leader. Winter's Leap again. Leader appeared to pull off a loose block around above the height of the anchor. Fell down to the upper tier ledge, which was quite busy, then bounced to the ground low tier. Fortunately, no one hit. So it sounds like they got to the lower off, went a little bit above, and pulled off something above it. So yeah, again, off. Sometimes when people put lower offs in, it's because the top out is shit. I know in the quarries, a lot of the routes have now got, back in the day we might have topped out, but now they've been, some of these routes have been sportified. It's just easier to put a lower off below the top, so you don't have to sort of go over teetering death scree Coombe Valley. Oh, Goblin Combe disaster. Climber team been working the route on a blue top rope. When the lead climber was feeling confident lead, he went for a lead attempt using the blue rope to lead. Critically, the top rope was not pulled before the lead attempt took place, as we planned to use it for further top rope climbing afterwards. The leader climbed past a section without any gear, which risked ground fall. He was aware of the ground fall risk, was moving carefully. After reaching the safety of good holds and a solid nut pavement, he clipped the rope into the nuts quick draw and thought he was safe. I was belaying during the climb, and when the climber clipped, I noticed the lead rope didn't move at all. I looked up and noticed the leader had clipped the nut quick draw into the top rope strand. So yeah, there's a top rope and there's a rope going up, and he's reached and not grabbed the rope that's attached to him. Yeah, it's again, we can make these errors. Fortunately, his belay noticed it. Again, similar rope colours. And then, oh, awkward. Let's go back. It was you're gonna boot me off. Oh, it doesn't like me anymore. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to go to this one anyway. I was just going to do 2025 today. I might come back. The climber attempt to clip the 6 bolt approximately 30 foot, missed the clip and subsequently fallen. The fall was initially caught for a split second before the climber experienced acceleration of free fall and ended up falling to the deck. Billy was using ATC and had paid out slack for the clip at the time of the fall. Struggling to remember exactly what happened due to the shock, but the belayer has rope burns on hands, chest and shoulder area. Belayer, after initially catching, couldn't arrest the slack running through in time for before the climber deck. The climber sent to hospital was precaution, but no injuries. Again, this is you know, it's not common that people are dropped at the wall, but it is common enough that yeah, if I just go, I'm gonna go back this way to this list, and we'll just go down and so that was an indoor one. Let's go to indoor belayer failure or error. So let's go down to the next indoor belayer failure or error. Indoor belayer failure or error. Indoor belayer failure or error. Indoor belay failure or error. Indoor belay failure or error. Indoor belayer climber inexperience. There was a slip, trip or fall. That's what harness misuse. So carelessness, belayer failure or error. You know, so indoors, you're more likely climb error, indoor climbing, belayer error, belayer error, belayer error, belayer error. Belayer. Yeah, so basically indoors you're more likely to be injured because of something you don't do, i.e. it's a belayer error. So yeah, hopefully that was you know, not so bad that you've run out of needles to stick in your eye. And like I said at the beginning, there are there's a whole list here, and I'll go through them bit by bit, because I learned something today. I didn't know about the gree and the om thing. That's really interesting. So yeah, hopefully you've learned something today. But for now, I am going to switch off